Duncan Supply Company was founded 81 years ago in 1936 by Russell K. Duncan and his wife Mildred. After leaving the refrigeration service business, Russell set out to be a distributor of parts and equipment. This was in the throes of the Great Depression, but despite the odds, Duncan Supply survived with the help of Russell, Mildred, Hazlitt Lucas, and Edwin Hunter.
During the war, if we had 5 rolls of copper tubing, we could sell 5 rolls, but we couldn't sell any more because we couldn't buy any more. The inventory we had when the war started was the inventory we had basically when the war was over. But we was able to get by. And you couldn't build a business for those for almost 5 years. It was a struggle, but it was, we survived it. The family was very close because all our Christmas parties was always out at Russ Miller's house every year for years in the basement. I'm talking about 6 or 7 people. And I remember one time playing the game, you had to give them something. Well, the women would give them a hairpin or something. And then they get satisfied with that. And they just keep going around and around, see. And I know Mrs. Madden got down to her blouse. I used to kid Kenny. He was, I babysitted for him. He'd come in, Mildred would bring him down to the store, and you know, we weren't that, especially during the war, we weren't that busy, and he loved to play. Our parts at that time were in cans. There's a company called Perfection Gear Company out of Chicago, where we bought our brass fittings. He'd get the boxes out. He wouldn't watch them. He'd put them out, you know, on the floor and play with them, bolts, nuts, and then put them back in the can. But he didn't always get them back in the right can. And well, the guy was he was installed meat cases. And he called up and said, "I bought a box of 1/4-inch flare nuts up here," and said, "There's everything in here but 1/4-inch."
In the 1950s, following his service in the U.S. Navy Seabees, Russell and Mildred's only son Kenneth came into the business. Kenneth, Kenny to his employees, worked every position in the company, starting in the warehouse and ending in the corner office as the president until he retired in 2000. During his time, the company saw many changes, but his core values always stayed true.
Family is everything. When you call in, you dial 1 if you're a family member, you dial 2 if you want to be a family member.
It's all about family at Duncan Supply Company. And when you hire in, you just become part of that family and you're treated exactly like a family member.
As soon as you are hired, the company takes you in, acts like you're just as much part of the family as anybody else is. It's a wonderful place to work. My father started here 3 years before I did, and so now I have there's 5 members of our side of the family that now works for Duncan Supply.
Well, I felt like part of the company family the first day I got there.
At first, when I hired here, he would used to walk out his back door by the steps in the warehouse, and he'd yell out to me when he was looking for me. He'd yell out, "Patrick, get up here." And when I went up there, we had like a father and son talk, and he gave me advice, and I took it, and I always remember those days.
I think the meaning of family at Duncan Supply Company is the fact that no matter what your relationship is with the other person work-wise, that when that other person needs help, that the Duncan Supply family or other group of employees at Duncan Supply, they're always the first ones to pitch in to help solve the problem for that person or help that person through a troubled time.
Back in 1985, my wife had left me, and I had a 3-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. Well, I was in a world of hurt and really had nobody else to turn to. So I went to Kenny one day and I told him, you know, what had happened. And I asked him if I could get a forward on my paycheck. And he said, well, if you do that, you know, you're really just going to be still in a mess. And I said, yeah, you're right. And he said, what would it take you? You know, how much money do you need to get on your feet again? And I said, well, probably about $500. And he says, okay, all right, son. And he said, give me about 5 minutes and go see Mrs. Blair, who was our controller across the way there. And he said, give me 5 minutes and she'll have a check for you. So I made arrangements to pay it weekly. At that time, we got paid weekly, and I paid it back $10 a week. And boy, then I knew this place was something special at that time.
I love the man. He was always good to me, and I recall 2 instances during the course of my tenure of 30 years where he kind of had to prod me a little bit. It didn't take but a prod like that to convince me that, hey, I need to stay on board with this guy and work for him. And that's what I chose to do both times.
Kenny is one of these guys that when you needed to get your butt chewed, he would chew your butt.
If you had done something wrong, he knew about it before you ever told him. Somehow I think he had mics up there in the store. I really do, because you couldn't do nothing without him knowing it, and it worked out real good. He was a nice boss, had no problem. His dad was the same way.
He was just a great, honest man. If you did something wrong, you were going to know about it. But if you did something right, you were going to know about it also.
But I appreciate everything Kenny has done for me. He's made me the man I am today, and I really appreciate that, because he taught me how he was always here. He was here on time, and that's what he's taught me. He's always show up, suit up, show up, and be the man you're supposed to be. And that's what he's done for me. He's taught me how to be the man I am today, and I really appreciate it. And I thank him very much.
Back in 1980, Kenny Duncan came up to me and he says, Cheryl, he says, how would you like to work in sales? So they put me on the sales counter at Duncan Supply, and it worked out really well for me. It was hard in the beginning, but Kenny says, nah, you can do it. And he gave me the shot to do it. I said, I don't think I can. Those guys aren't going to trust me. But he says, yeah, they're going to trust you. And I did that for 20 years, and I was really happy doing that. He always offered me things that he thought that I could do. He always told me I could do those things, you know.
They go out of their way, whether it be family issues, personal issues, whatever kind of issues, they're very understanding. Family always comes first at Duncan Supply.
If we take care of each other, take care of the customers, Duncan Supply will flourish.
Well, what I'd like to say, Kenny.
Anything I have to say to Kenny?
Wow. What I would tell Kenny Duncan, mostly I would say thank you.
I would personally like to thank Kenny for everything he's done for me.
Thanks for running a family-oriented business.
Mr. Duncan, thank you for giving me a career.
Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity. Thank you for making it just a great experience and a great place to work.
You can't respect the guy enough. He would never ask you to do something that he hadn't done himself or done even more. But thank you for caring enough about me to want me to be at Duncan Supply and letting me spend my life here, because it was wonderful.
Thanks back then to making it. It wasn't a job as much as I look forward to coming to a place to hang out, to learn things and have fun.
Kenny, on my time with Duncan Supply, once again, I just want to feel a heartfelt thank you to you, your wife, your family, for the things you've given me and the opportunities that have come my way by being employed by Duncan Supply.
I'd also like to thank Kenny for coming in and still coming in the building and being part of. You know, he's not one of these guys who just walks around and just, you know, that he comes in and still treats me like family, still comes in, and I really appreciate him. That it's always an honor and a privilege coming in this building to be an employee at Duncan Supply Company.
The business has grown, and it's got a good foundation, good base.
I feel like it's
been a privilege to know him and a privilege to work for him. I really do. It's been a good friendship.
And he's done a good job.
Done a good job.
He sure has.
Kenny once told me, and this seldom came out from him, and Kenny said, "You done good." And I guess at this point, I'm going to return that to you, Kenny. You done good.
Over the past 8 decades, Duncan Supply has seen many changes and large growth for a privately owned distributorship. However, the spirit of family amongst the employees that Kenny infused into the company is still present today and will continue forward from the 3rd into the 4th generation of the Duncan family.